Y'all, I look like a ragamuffin. Can I just say that it's like took me a few minutes to even be able to go live because I don't know. You ever experience something as a child and you know it's wrong. You know what you're going through is wrong. And you have this like sense that things are not right. And then you grow up and you have the World Wide Web at your fingertips and you learn stuff that you never knew that make the situation 10 times worse. 10 times worse. So I already got my computer up here. I'm going to try to like not. Hey, Laura. Like, I knew that my experiences at this, I don't even know what to call it. I knew that it wasn't normal, but I didn't know that so many people were affected in the same ways that I was. And also that people were re-victimized in this facility over and over and over for years. The facility that I'm talking about is now closed. They closed it in 2011, a few years after I was allowed to leave the program. It is through the Department of Corrections. It was called Samarcand Youth Development Center. It is in, I want to say Montgomery County, but it might be, it's Montgomery County, North Carolina. It's in North Carolina. There's actually been a book that was written on this. It's called The Bad Girls at Samarcand. You can get it on Amazon. Sexuality and Sterilization in a Southern Juvenile Reformatory. Ew. Can I just say that they didn't even like put laws on the books to stop eugenics until not even 15 years ago? They were still sterilizing young girls. We're going to get into it. This is really so fucked up. So, you know, most of us would like to believe that what we have going on in this nation right now with the sterilization and mutilation of young children, the brainwashing of young children, I thought that this was the first time. I thought that this was the first time that our government, our justice system, medical professionals, I thought that this was the first time that people were ever sterilized and harmed for the benefit of money and personal gain, but I was wrong. There's this little thing called eugenics. Let's talk about what that is. Crazily enough, North Carolina had a full board for eugenics back in the 1930s. What eugenics is, it is select population, the smartest, the brightest, the richest, the elite, and then the people that are not so maybe educated. They were sterilizing the people that they deemed not smart enough, funny enough. They were sterilizing these people for, it's like let me just read this to you because I don't know these big ass words. So eugenics come into being is a set of beliefs or practices that aim to improve the genetic quality of a human population. So they pick and choose who they want to survive, which bloodlines, and they kill off the rest. Historically, eugenics have attempted to alter the frequency of various human prototypes by inhibiting the fertility of people in groups considered inferior. So if you were the bottom of the barrel, baby, they were trying to sterilize you so that you couldn't procreate and carry on your what they deemed as stupid genes. So they wanted to promote those that they considered their bloodlines were superior to others. So the history of eugenics began in the late 19th century when a popular eugenics movement emerged in the United Kingdom and then spread to many countries, including the United States, Canada, Australia, and most European countries. I bet they did. It says, in this period, people from across the political spectrum loved the idea of eugenics. I bet they did. They were already the elites. Many countries adopted eugenics policies intended to improve the quality of their population genetic stock. So they wanted to cherry pick the smartest, brightest, and kill off the rest of the population, essentially. They didn't want them to procreate, and they were forcing sterilization. They would sterilize women. So there was a whole board in North Carolina, as I said. It was called the Eugenics Board of North Carolina, the EBNC. It was a state board, and it was formed in 1933 with the passing of legislation, and so it was formally, in 1929, had been ruled unconstitutional by the North Carolina Supreme Court, but then by 1933 it was in full swing. Over time, the board shifted their focus to include sterilizations. I'm sorry, any board that's named Eugenics, I'm going to think that that was your main purpose anyways. So, I want this book so bad, y'all. Bad Girls at Samarcand, and that's Samarcand, Sexuality and Sterilization in a Southern Juvenile Reformatory. This is what we're about to get into because I lived in this place for 2 years. I wonder if my parents knew anything about the history of this place before I was sent here, but I don't know. I don't know. So, more than 2,000 women and girls were forcibly sterilized in the first 2 decades of North Carolina's state eugenics program from 1929 to 1950. And can I just say, these women were robbed of their future. They were abused. We're going to get into that. We're going to go into the history of this place that I lived in. These girls had been through so much, come from broken homes, which added to the reason that they were even in the Department of Corrections to start with, okay? Kids that are well provided for, loved, guided, cared for, they don't end up in DOC most of the time, okay? That's all I'm saying, statistically speaking. So, these women had been through so much, and then they go here, they get sterilized forcibly, children as young as 10 years old, little girls. And then the state of North Carolina offers them $50,000 for everything they've been through. I mean, it's a slap in the face, first of all. And just remember that North Carolina had this eugenics board. So just remember, they had a whole division, money being funneled for things, and this was a whole operation of evil. So, while many governmental institutions and scientists propelled the movement forward, the new book, Bad Girls at Samarcand, Sexuality and Sterilization in the Southern Juvenile Reformatory, traces the story of one reformatory's unexpected role in the process. The State Home and Industrial School in Eagle Springs, North Carolina, was initially created to house poor white girls suspected of deviant behavior. Girls as young as 10 years old, I just want to be clear, these were babies. In 1931, an arson case brought this school into the national spotlight, and it became the site of a frequent forced sterilizations for young girls as young as 10. So we're going to get into how the school got set on fire. And I have pictures. I want to show y'all the size of this place. First of all, this was the first, I do believe it was the first youth development center set up through the Department of Corrections. This was a huge campus that had no fencing, no wire, no nothing. It looks like a college campus. There's all of these big buildings. There's all of these, there was a swimming pool. Most of the buildings, the church has been there since 1926. It's still standing. It is very eerie. Very, very eerie. That's the church. So we used to have choir and stuff in there because I sang when I was there. You had to be involved in some program, and so I was involved in choir. I was involved in band. We did a lot of productions for like Christmas. And everybody went to church. They made you go to church. They made you go to church. The guy that actually opened Samarcand was a reverend. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But how creepy. The church is still standing on the property. So there was all of these sporadic buildings all over the campus. As you can see, all these different shelters. Most of these properties are like out of date and were dilapidated. Some of them, they did several renovations. The state would receive money, and then, you know, every 10 to 20, 30 years, they'd build a new building because other buildings were falling down. So the only article that I could even find on this place, which is creepy in itself, they're erasing history. The only article I could find told me everything I need to know. It's from the Art and Soul of the Sandhills, which is ironically where I graduated high school from, Sandhills Community College. So I was in Samarcand when I graduated from high school. Yeah. So the dorm rooms, so they have multiple buildings on the property, no fence. There's a huge pond. They had like some workout center with gym equipment and stuff. There was a drug rehab on the campus for girls, and I would actually join that rehab under a lie because I was ready to get out of there. I lied and said that I'd smoked marijuana before when I never had. I really wanted to get out of there. I'd been there for a year and a half at that point, and I wanted out of there. So I was like, yeah, I've smoked pot before. They were like, perfect, you qualify for the program. Now I understand they get money for that, but it didn't matter to them whether or not I'd smoked weed or not. They didn't care. But there was lots of houses on the property. When you get to the facility, the first thing that they do is immediately strip search you, make you squat and cough. They search your hair. They search your mouth. They completely make you uncover. Okay, and I remember being young, 14 maybe, and it was the weirdest thing because it was like 3 or 4 different COs standing there with me and another girl, and we're have to get undressed in front of each other and squat and cough. And the girl that was with me was like 2 or 3 years younger than me. She might have been 11 or 12. I remember that distinctively, how weird that was. They put you in a dorm. And there's multiple girls on bunk beds and stuff, but I wouldn't be there that long because the day after I got there, I ended up trying to escape, and I stayed gone for like half a day. I snuck into one of these creepy ass houses, y'all, the medical equipment and shit in the basement. The house was no longer in commission, but I got in through, you see the broken windows? I got in through the back and was down in the basement, but they had the door locked, so I couldn't go upstairs. It was crazy. Anyways, when I went to make my exit out of that house, or like, I think he was a PE teacher or something, I don't know. He saw me and he made a beeline for me, honey. He tackled me like a damn NFL player, put me in damn handcuffs and took me to damn solitary confinement. We're going to talk about solitary confinement and all of the abuse and stuff that went on in this place, because I spent for that, I spent a few weeks in solitary confinement for trying to escape. So, once again, I was 14. So, you know, but the school was set up with no fences because some guy said, we'll get into it, something about STDs won't be as easy to spread. Y'all, the whole reason that Samarcand was even invented was because there was a problem with prostitution in North Carolina. They were about to open up Fort Bragg. They didn't want their soldiers fornicating, and they used state money to practice eugenics and other horrible treatments on young girls under the guise that they were going to teach these girls not to be promiscuous. Let me just read, okay? I wish that I was making this up. Once again, this article is called Rising from the Ashes, The Art and Soul of Samarcand. Sandhill, sorry. So this is not the first time that our government, medical professionals, doctors, therapists, that they've sterilized and harmed children. They've been doing it since the world's been around, apparently. So this reporter goes in. This school has it was shut down finally in 2011. It is now a training academy for officers. Officers pay to go to school there to get their basic law enforcement training license or whatever the hell it is. So it's no longer open. It shut down 6 or 7 years after I would leave here. So it's not open. But this reporter had inside access. It doesn't tell me when. I want to say 2018. There is a groundskeeper that was staying on the grounds, and he was giving her access to this property and telling her about the history. She says as she is walking, she says you can almost hear the paint peeling from the walls. If ever a place was haunted, it's this one. So Samarcand Minor is what it was called years prior to me going there. When I went there, it was Samarcand Youth Development Center through the Department of Corrections. It was originally Samarcand Minor, and it is now a closed reformatory for delinquent girls. More than a generation ago, the dormitory housed wayward teenagers in Ingle Springs as what was known as the Home and Industrial School for Girls. She said the building is completely eerie. She says they use this as the infirmary for girls that was recovering from surgeries. And she says that this man, the groundskeeper, admitted that the surgeries should have never occurred. They were forced sterilizing children as young as 10 years old. Gardner's Hall's forsaken appearance stands in stark contrast to the current spick-and-span look of most of the campus buildings, all geared towards providing the ideal environment for instructing and training North Carolina's law enforcement and corrections personnel now. Tucked away in the pine woods, Samarcand Training Academy is a state-of-the-art, but even a century after its founding in 1918 to unravel. 1918. I need the damn glasses, y'all. I'm getting old. 1918, Samarcand Minor remains the subject of controversy, little of which, some of this I don't want to read because it's like, in her words, the use of the 230-acre main campus for educational purposes predates even Samarcand Minor's existence. In 1914, Charles Henderson opened an open-air school for boys on the property. In the early 20th century, a near plague of tuberculosis had swept the country. Educators like Henderson believed that exposure to fresh air could ward off the disease, so the school held classes outdoors. The advent of World War I resulted in a significant loss of manpower, and he was forced to shut the doors. So it was tuberculosis. It was a Presbyterian minister from Charlotte and a North Carolina Women's Club leader who lit the fuse that led to Samarcand Minor. In 1914, Reverend A.A. McGeechee began receiving statewide attention for his powerful sermons using punishers to perform good works in service of the Lord, focusing on his Lord have mercy. I read this and I was like, oh, I got this. And now I'm reading it again and I'm like, no, I don't got this. So this reverend felt like we had a society of fallen women that was seduced by the streets into lives led into sin. So he preached that good Christians should be concerned about the rehabilitation of female prostitutes and other loose women of loose morals. He thought all women was hussies, honey. The victims of the sexual debasement at the hands of devious male. I can't even say some of these words. I don't even think that's like legal to say anymore. So he said that they should make a school to redeem women and reform for all fallen women, and forcibly advocated that the state establish some way to counteract all the prostitution that was going on. This is how he sounds like a pedophile already. Like, why are you so upset? You're a preacher, and that's your only concern is reforming women who you deem as fallen? Sir, you are not God. What is going on right now? I mean, this is unbelievable. This is the only article that I could find on this. Even if my parents did know, there was nothing they could do. Once the Department of Corrections has you, it's not like your parents can take you back, baby. You know what I mean? I was doomed either way, whether they knew about this or not. In 1917, there was a print of this preacher's sermon, and he joined the woman of the women's clubs, the North Carolina Federation of Women's Clubs. Kate Burr Johnson began beating the drum at the legislature in Raleigh for a bill to create the, quote, state home and industrial school for girls and women. They picked out Samarcand Minor and thought that it was a lovely location. So a lot of lawmakers actually expressed reservations over this. Were both young girls and adult prostitutes to be housed at the same facility? Apparently so, at least at first. Would female felons be mixed in with girls who had committed minor violations? The proponents of the bill thought not, but there was nothing to prevent this. So at this time, it looks like the longest length that a girl could be incarcerated was up to 3 years. Oh, wow. Oh, no. Y'all, these damn tiny-ass letters. Wouldn't it be better to attend these females, particularly younger ones, in or near their home counties? That was another problem. It was only one school, and, like, that makes it harder for you to see your family. They can't drive every weekend to see you, and yeah, that was another thing. They isolate these kids away from their families. They control your mail, your visits, all of that. So if something is happening to you, it's less likely for you to tell because you don't have access to anyone to help you. Anyways, I'm just speaking from personal experience on that. The advocates argued that the state could more uniformly deal with the girls and women in a single institution. How long could that be? A state home, keeping young girls in custody. The length of the girls' incarceration, up to 3 years, would be left to the sole discretion of the Reformatory's Board of Managers. So much for due process. So this was a school for white girls to make them not be whores, turn into prostitutes. And you know, the crazy thing is I read somewhere else that the majority of girls that were in this school were not only not sexually active, but they had never been charged with any kind of offense such as prostitution. Samarcand Minor would house only white women and girls. The legislature gave no thought to funding the reformatory dedicated to the rehabilitation of wayward black girls until 1925. In short order, dormitories, schools, and administration buildings, a chapel, a home for the new superintendent were all under construction. The 5-person board of managers, this woman right here, McNaughton, her name's Agnes, Agnes? Agnes, yes, Agnes, McNaughton. She was the first superintendent of this school, and look at this creepy heifer. Look at her. Do you know how much that outfit was back then? Them shoes ain't roughed up. Them nice shoes, nice fur coat, nice leather bag. If that's leather, it looks like some other animal. She was rolling in it. This was the 1920s. We were in a depression, honey. Or we about to be. You know what I mean? We was either in one, on the brink of one, something had happened around then. So, or was it the 30s? Was it 36? Jesus, I get it 26. And Titanic was 9/12. I watched the thing on that this morning. Sorry. So before long, close to 200 young females were staying on the campus. The young girls weren't at all charged with sexual offenses or serious crimes. Most of the girls came to Samarcand because they were maladjusted or had committed minor misdemeanors like vagrancy? What is that? Or public drunkenness. Many had no record at all. Interesting. They could arrest you for being poor and homeless? Apparently so. That's what it means. A poor person with no home or job who moves from place to place. Wow. I did not know that. Yeah. It's when you drift from place to place. God, I'm going to go to jail one day. You know what I mean? Let's see here. So they had over 200 girls. Most had no record at all. They had been banished to Samarcand by their parents who deemed their daughters uncontrollable. Most come from broken homes. Others had been SA'd in their homes and somehow received the blame of it. They were cotton mill workers and girls from the streets, and sometimes both. A lot of the girls were either poorly educated or thought to lack intelligence. Regardless of whether these deficiencies were innate or stemmed from lack of educational opportunities, Samarcand tended to identify them as feeble-minded. It was this labeling that was employed when the state of Eugenics board authorized these surgeries. So McNaughton, who you just saw in the picture, she established a relentless, busy routine of schooling, vocational training, religious instruction, and exercise for the girls in hopes of providing each a useful trade or profession and improving her mental health and moral condition. Moral condition. Like I'm a religious nut, y'all, and this is a bit much for me, okay? I love me some Jesus, but I'm sorry, ma'am, you are not God's bride. Like, what is going on here? Moral condition. And it is Pinehurst, North Carolina, where this is. There were no fences around the campus, but the girls whose misbehavior incurred McNaughton's wrath were subject to being locked in their room at Chamberlain Hall, the dormitory for most difficult girls. They were further stigmatized by having to wear blue bloomers, while honor girls got to wear khaki. And I remember that. There was still a uniform system when I was there. And it wasn't like a regular uniform system. Like, uniforms are fine. But it was done I don't know, it was done in a bad way. It was meant to be harmful. It was meant to show that you weren't, you know, I don't know how to explain it. Like, if you had on certain colors and you were like an honor, you know, like you were goody-goody. If you had on different colors, that meant that either you were A, going through processing, or B, you had done something bad and like been demoted. Corporal punishment was administered, and sometimes brutally. This is something that I distinctively remember. I was beat by staff. Yeah. It was nothing to have a staff slap you in the face or spit on you or call you names. That was a daily occurrence, especially when you first got there, like after the strip search and stuff, when you were staying in that one dormitory to process. They were, you know, they treated you like an adult prison would treat you. You know what I mean? So, while North Carolina legislators enthusiastically created Samarcand, they were reluctant to fund it. From its inception, the reformery experienced several financial woes. The federal government, a prospective avenue for assistance, during World War I, military leaders and members of Congress viewed with an alarm the increasing number of American soldiers infected with venereal diseases. To secure the help of the military manpower, those leaders urged the state to step up efforts to restrain prostitution. I am so lost right now. What does military soldiers have to do with 10-year-old little girls? Am I crazy? Probably, Brooke. You were in this fucking place. Probably. As an incentive for doing so, Congress would help finance state efforts to keep the prostitutes and promiscuity camp girls far away from the military base. The potential infection of soldiers stationed at North Carolina become a subject of increased attention for when Fort Bragg opened. So do you hear what I'm saying right now? Listen, I'm not a very smart woman, but I don't know what minor children have anything to do with a military base. I'm sorry, babe. So, y'all just made up some bullshit so that y'all could get the funding that you wanted. 100%. It's not even logical. If it doesn't make sense, then it's not true. It's not even logical. They lied to the federal government saying that they wanted to prevent teenage girls from being promiscuous and being hussies. And they said, when you open that military base, this is going to be a problem because we have all of these promiscuous young girls out here and they'll spread, what was it? Venereal diseases to the soldiers, and we need our soldiers, so we need funding so that we can sterilize and play eugenics on a mass group of children. It's so sickening. It's been going on forever, right? Apparently. They're just getting through loopholes now. Now they done brainwashed all of our doctors and brainwashed all of our psychologists and they're brainwashing all of our children through our universities. And now, now everybody's in on it. It's just crazy. It's still the genocide of children and mass sterilization. It's still harming children, regardless any way you want to cut it. And they did it under the guise to prevent promiscuous girls from being anywhere near the military base. So stupid. That's what they said to get funding. McNaughton, who was the headmaster of this school, the 1920 application for federal assistance highlighted the high percentage of Samarcand girls suffering from venereal diseases. And you read what we read up top, right? That's not true. Those girls were not sexually active. They were not prostitutes, and most of them didn't even have prior convictions on their record, and it was minor petty crimes, and most of those children were actually sent there by their parents because their parents were bad parents. So this woman lies on a federal assistance application saying that these young girls have venereal diseases and she needs funding for Samarcand Youth Development, Samarcand Minor, so that she can fix this issue and the new soldiers at Fort Bragg won't get venereal diseases. This is the most craziest shit I've ever read in my life. I had no clue. So Congress would help finance state efforts to keep funding Samarcand Minor. These females range from 10 to 30. 10 years old to 30 years old. That's a huge ass age gap. First of all, that's adults mixed in with children. That's not safe. Wow, it housed adolescent white girls in need of redemption as Southern ladies, and also adult prostitutes in need of punishment, treatment, and control. Years would elapse before adult prostitutes were sent to live in a different housing place. They had children mixed in. So during McNaughton's 16 tenure, she was there for 16 years running this school. She was the superintendent. The reformatory was periodically inspected by the State Board of Charities and Public Welfare and generally passed these reviews with flying colors. Look how creepy this shit was. I know exactly where that building is. I see. It's still on the property. Or they might have tore it down. There was like a whole bunch of buildings. I can remember 7 or 8. And it's probably more than that. And people wonder why I don't trust the damn government. Look at everything I've been through since I was a child. This is why. Because I know what I went through there. I can only imagine what these poor girls went through. There was all this medical equipment and shit left over from like the 1920s, 30s, 40s. I don't even know. I remember this one time I got in an argument with my teacher. Well, I didn't get in an argument. I talked back and she picked me up and made me walk down the hall. And she opened a room that was in this like a infirmary building, but it's not an infirmary. It was a schoolhouse. It used to be an infirmary back in the fucking day. And she unlocked the door and threw me in there and left me in there until school was out. But it was nothing but medical equipment. It was like old dentist chairs, old surgical tables for like probably fucking lobotomies. Who knows? It was all of this old creepy ass equipment in there. I just have to mention that by the time I was placed here, I was a minority. I was one of very few white girls. It was mainly black girls that was here. So that's kind of crazy that it was started as a all-white school for girls. Yeah. So this Agnes McNaughton, she ran the school, but also this preacher was heavily involved in running this school. So while most honor girls cope with day-to-day existence at the reformatory, many of the girls housed at Chamberlain Hall, the punishment dorm, seethed with resentment at the bed bugs, harsh discipline, and they had the right to use corporal punishment at this time, and they actually had the right when I was there to use corporal punishment. So they used it. I just want to be clear, they used it. And I can only imagine how bad it was back then, because it did say that she was beat. She was whipped on both occasions with a hickory switch for as long as 3 minutes. She required treatment. They also shaved. This is one victim that has talked about this. Margaret Peg Abernathy she was a victim of incest at 10 by her own father. Her stepmother sent the blameless Peg to Samarcand. She revolted against McNaughton's strict discipline and twice tried to run away. Not a good idea, girl. She was whipped, and then they shaved her head. This is typical. This is a youth development center. On March 12, 1931, Peg learned that one of the girls planned to start a fire at a neighboring brick building. And I do believe that they set it on fire. A couple of the buildings were burned down on the property at one point, and it was, they torched stock and stuff in the dorm's attic. They snuffed out the fire before serious damage was done. Yes, and they started an additional fire after the first fire was put out. And the fire went undetected until it was too late. The brick building and Chamberlain Halls, both wooden structures, were engulfed by flames. McNaughton, the headmaster of the school, she obtained confessions from a number of girls. Which is crazy because those admitting their guilt seemed oblivious to the fact that they were implicating themselves in the crime, which potentially carried the death penalty. "16 girls were eventually charged with involvement in this arson and held for trial. They ended up setting jail fires too. Lord have mercy. Somebody take the matches. Why are y'all giving children matches? This was a big case back then, apparently. Oh, I see why. So this girl and her friend decides that they've had enough of Samarcand and all of their tough punishments and beatings and probably molestation and everything else. I'm speaking from experience. And they set shit on fire, and then the court system wanted to burn them at the stake, not literally, but figuratively. And then the news got a hold of the fact that these girls were being brutally whipped, and they started empathizing with these girls. "14 were found guilty of the reduced charge of attempted arson. 18 months to 5 years. Lord. So this was pretty bad for Samarcand Minor when this happened. There was an editorial done in the pilot, and it said the girls' parents, the reformatory, and the North Carolina child welfare system that had driven girls with no previous criminal records to arson. So this guy said, listen, these girls were not criminals. Their parents ain't worth a damn. They should have been in an orphanage, not in a damn reformatory for delinquents. And he said that they that they were drove to do this by the harsh punishment that they were facing in the home. First of all, these are children. Their brains have not even developed. Okay, I used to try to set shit on fire too. It usually stemmed from wanting attention from my parents. You know what I mean? Once. I did it once. And they beat the hell out of me. That's not the attention that I wanted. So it looks like the state launched an investigation that resulted to the end of corporal punishment in Samarcand. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. That's a blatant lie. They didn't end corporal punishment in North Carolina until recently. Because I grew up getting my ass whooped in school. (1994). A lot of states banned it in 94. As of August of 23, it's still legal in 17 states. I don't know about that, boss. Maybe they ended it there. Girls under the age of 10 would no longer be accepted. Oh my God, there was girls as younger than 10? So it says the events took a huge toll on McNaughton, who was the headmaster of the school. She took a leave of absence in 1933 and then retired a year later. So Grace Robson was supposed to succeed McNaughton. Robinson hiring her set off a whole new process for Samarcand inmates, a new era of psychological testing and classification. Her program sought to separate the fit from the unfit and determine a recommendation on sterilization. What in the hell is going on now? Today we consider forced sterilizations, eugenics, to be an inhumane practice right out of Germany's playbook. But such surgeries were legally sanctioned for decades by North Carolina's General Assembly. The law allowed sterilization of any mentally diseased, feeble-minded, or epileptic inmate or patient. Social workers believed that an individual would procreate a child with a tendency towards serious or mental deficiency. The state established a eugenics board in 1933 to provide some semblance of due process for helping girls before their ability to bear children was surgically removed. The board served primarily as a rubber stamp for the recommendations of Robinson and like-minded administrators at the institution. Sterilizations of Samarcand's girls were performed at Moore County Hospital, and the girls recuperated at Gardner Hall, which is on the campus. Yep, sure were. It's not just now they're doing it. They've been doing it for damn generations, apparently. From 1929 to 1950, 2,500 forced sterilizations were performed in North Carolina, the majority white females. At least 293 Samarcand girls were sterilized. The last recorded Samarcand sterilization was 1947. North Carolina was hardly alone in promoting eugenics. 32 states allowed it in one form or another. Talk about a communist country. Jesus Christ. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote that, quote, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Y'all, these people been evil from the start. I wonder if this was I wonder which party wanted eugenics to happen in North Carolina. Let's see. Which political party was for eugenics? Ain't that crazy? I don't know. Technically, it was the progressives who were in favor of eugenics, but Republicans were progressive at one time, so that doesn't really... We've actually switched roles. It says both. Both. Looks like both. Interesting. So, So it looks post-World War II, support for the forced sterilizations waned, but North Carolina, the program actually gained steam by targeting female recipients of aid to dependent children, ADC. At least half of those were African Americans. The Eugenics Board was finally abolished by the state in 1977, but laws permitting, I haven't eaten today, permitting forced sterilizations were not actually repealed until 2003. Governor Mike Easley issued an apology to the victims in 2013. The General Assembly passed a bill authorizing up to $50,000 per person to compensate those sterilized by the Eugenics Board. So by 1955, the campus sported an entirely new look with 11 buildings. 4 more were built the following decade. In the 60s, the institution started receiving African American girls. This was the place that I would have to go in to visit my parents. So the parents were never allowed on the rest of the campus. If your family come to see you, you had to visit them here. They would have to, that's the only part of the campus that the parents were ever allowed, other than the church. I do believe they come to see me perform one time. We did like something for church. But they really separate you. You don't have phone calls, you don't get letters, you don't get visits. They didn't want you to do that because then you can tell your parents what you're going through. So they try, the staff try to isolate as much as possible. In 1974, juvenile boys were admitted to Samarcand for the first time. The percentage of boys in the Samarcand population gradually increased over time. Andy Almond was appointed as Samarcand's director in 1986. He stayed until 2002, which was when I got there. His tenure, he focused on reformatory, transitioning, individualized therapy, counseling, education, and rehabilitation. The facility was formally renamed Samarcand Youth Development Center. During Andy's time there, he tried to make sure that students were as close to their hometown as possible. So, see, before, they just took kids from all over the states, and then their family would be 5-6 hours away, and that made it harder. So he did try to house these girls in facilities closer to their homes rather than in large, centralized, and expensive reformatories. So the General Assembly actually closed the facility June 30th of 2011. The last 26 teenagers vacated the campus. Why y'all say it like that? They didn't vacate. They moved them to a different prison. What are you talking about? So it looks like they're turning this school into, like I said, a training academy. It looks like they're going to have, they already have. They've been training officers through there. They have a new dining hall, a total of 168 bedrooms and 11 classrooms. And it's exceeding $23 million because they've been building stuff on this property. I want that book so bad. I'm going to read that book. The place was a shithole. It definitely did more harm than it ever did good. I don't think I learned anything good there. I learned how to become a criminal there. I learned how to bust heads open there more. So y'all remember a few weeks ago, I was talking about a 12-year-old boy that was in one of these youth camps. This is a recent case. We actually got his autopsy back this morning. And I said that somebody killed him, and they did. He had actually only been in this facility for less than 24 hours. He was sentenced. He was sent to the youth camp. He spent one night in a tent, a bevy or something. Hold on, I'm going to read it to you in a second. And the next morning they found his body. 12-year-old child. So the death of a 12-year-old boy at a North Carolina wilderness camp for troubled adolescence has been ruled a homicide. His autopsy showed that he was suffocated. The boy died in February, less than 24 hours after he arrived at Trails, Carolina. This is out of is that North Carolina? Let me freaking find out. No. Or did I already read that? Yeah. Yeah, this is out of North Carolina. So this is through the DOC. So this wilderness camp, hold on. I want to know if this was court mandated or if his parents sent him here. So he arrives at Trails, North Carolina, or Trails, Carolina, and it's a for-profit program that has since lost its operating license. Trails, Carolina has said that the death appeared to be accidental and that staff members tried to perform CPR on the boy when they found him unresponsive in the morning. He was inside of a bevy, a one-person tent secured with an alarm. Asphyxia due to smothering. Y'all just lock these kids up in here? That's what it says. It says the camp did not immediately provide a comment on the medical examiner's findings, which listed the boy's cause of death as asphyxia due to smothering or inability to get oxygen. In this case, due to covering the nose and mouth with a material that was not breathable. The camp has said it routinely places children in bivvies overnight for their safety when they arrived. The autopsy report said the inner mesh panel of the boy's bivvy was torn, so counselors sealed the outer with weather-resistant door panel instead. What? So he suffocated to death? I'm not getting it, y'all. Did he suffocate to death in the damn tent? Because they... Well, when you say asphyxia due to smothering, I thought you meant like somebody like smothered him. Sorry. See, this is shit I'm talking about. We gotta fix how we talk about things. So it looks like the inner mesh panel of this, I gotta find out what a bivvy is, y'all, and if I'm even saying it right. It looks like the inside of this panel was torn. So the camp counselors put some kind of weather... Oh, I see now. It's a tiny-ass little damn tent. This is what it looks like. Hello, hello. So it looks like a one-person, like, little tent. I don't know, though, how that could even happen. It don't even make sense. If it don't make sense, it probably ain't true. I'm just saying. We'll see what they're gonna do, but so counselors sealed the outer weather-resistant door panel instead, which was not the camp's protocol. The autopsy report issued by the state chief medical examiner's office said that bivvies typically include warnings against full enclosure because the weather-resistant outer layer may lead to condensation or breathing restrictions. You think? It's literally a little cocoon. Officials have identified the boy only by his initials, CJH. A spokesperson for his family said that the family had no comment. Sounds like a wonderful family. Gee, I wonder why he was in a wilderness camp. You can't even say you love your child. You're heartbroken. Nothing. People like that can have kids. Let's just not forget, okay? No charges were announced. They're doing an investigation. How do y'all know it was the tent, though? Mm. Shit's wild. It's actually really sad. It's a miracle that I'm even halfway a decent fucking human after everything that I've been through. It's crazy. You know, I didn't know that place, I knew something went on there because of all of the medical equipment that was left over from back in the day, the way that the teachers behaved, the way that the staff were. I knew that it was not a good place from the moment that I set foot on campus. I knew that I was going to be harmed immediately. And I was for 2 years. I was sexually abused for 2 years. So, you know, that's what happens in these places. As a matter of fact, I saw a statistic. They found that your percentage of sexual abuse in these types of facilities can go up as much as 30% depending on which facility you're in. So just know that when these girls are going in there, a good portion of them are getting abused. From 1929 to the mid-1970s, North Carolina sterilized about 7,600 people in the nation's most aggressive program of its kind. It was in the name of eugenics. And this was some freak named Francis Galton. He wanted to improve or impair the racial quality of future generations. "77% of all of the people that were sterilized in North Carolina were women before the 1960s. When black people became the majority of those sterilized, poor, rural white girls were the primary targets of authorities and women reformers. Girls were punished for engaging in deviant behaviors such as sexual activity or crossing racial lines in their romantic interests." So if you were a white girl back then and you liked a black boy, you were getting sent off to this school to get sterilized. It's unbelievable. Poor white girls who were sexually abused were also criminalized, labeled feeble-minded, and institutionalized. Samarcand Minor, North Carolina's industrial school for girls, was a juvenile facility designed to keep troubled girls in line. In reality, this whites-only institution in the town of Eagle Springs was a violent place where courts, social workers, and parents committed young white girls for not adhering to social norms or the rules of white supremacy. So, if your daddy was a sharecrop person and he owned a bunch of slaves and you was nice to the slaves, he would send you to damn Samarcand because you weren't a white KKK member. The school was notorious for its corporal punishment, including solitary confinement, poor living conditions, and uncertainty about when and what was required for release. That was another thing. When I was in there, there was no hope of getting released. They wanted to keep you as long as possible. And they could tack on time. The superintendent, whoever ran the school, if you piss somebody off, they'll give you an extra 3 months. And there's nothing you can do about it. And you know what they do? They send the judge paperwork. He stamps it. And you're there for an additional 3 months. There was no rules and regulations back then. They could do whatever the fuck they wanted when I was there. Way early 2000. So 2002... the end of 2003 until 2004. I'm sorry, 2001, the end of 2001 until 2004. So I was only sentenced to 6 months, and I spent years there because I was white. I just want to be clear. I was treated like shit because I was white by people that worked at the school, by the people that ran the school, the Department of Corrections, because I was white. The school was notorious for its corporal punishment, including solitary confinement, poor living conditions, and uncertainty about when and what was required for release. Samarcand participated in the state's disgraced Eugenics program. Nearly 300 women were sterilized at Samarcand as part of the program between 1933 and 1947. In 1931, 6 inmates revolted against their treatment and conditions by setting dormitories on fire. I wish they would have set them all on fire, honey. All the evil y'all was doing there. And you know that sexual abuse in a place like this is rampant. If it was still going on when I was there, just imagine how bad it was back then. I still find it so weird that this reverend come out and said, oh, these young wayward girls are going to be a problem for Fort Bragg. They've been able to lie in court documents, legislation. They've been able to lie and just say whatever they want to make things bend the way that they want for all of humanity. And it'll probably always be like that. Learning about this has made me realize that they can do whatever they want. The government, the DOJ, the DOC, the damn DSS, they can just make up whole fake ass conditions and say, oh, the venereal diseases, we have to teach these young girls not to be prostitutes, but let's take 10-year-olds and mix them in with 30-year-olds who are known prostitutes and hope that nothing bad happens. It's just crazy. And you can best believe with her fur coat and her damn alligator bag, that bitch was not hurting for shit. She was in it for the damn money. You can look, y'all, you got to read between the lines, okay? There was a rhyme and reason for these people to do this, and money. Okay, when those girls set those buildings on fire and those girls went to jail for setting the buildings on fire, this woman resigned because she knew that her free ride was up. She knew that the media got storm of what these girls were going through there, and that's why they set the facility on fire. She resigned. She took a year off and then resigned from the school. So she was making money until them girls set them buildings on fire, in my opinion, and then all her dirt started coming to light. And at that point, eugenics, society was really frowning upon that. You know what I mean? So she had no choice but to resign. And there's no telling how much money she made, how many kickbacks, how many children she harmed. I mean, we know she harmed at least 300 because they were sterilized. It's sick. It's absolutely sick. I just wonder if my parents knew that this shit happened before they sent me there. So in 2002, I knew that there was boys there. I thought that. When I first got there, there was boys on the campus. There was boys' dorms and girls' dorms. So it says, and I thought that I remember they used to make us get out of the pool. All the girls could get in the pool at one time, or all of the boys could get in the pool at one time. Girls and boys were not allowed to be intermixing with each other in this facility. But I do remember the day that I tried to escape, they were moving boys, and that would have been, so it says that they stopped having boys there in 2002, and I was there before that. So I thought I remembered this morning when I was thinking about swimming in this big ass pool, I was like, there was boys there. Whose boys were those? So, in 1974, the facility transferred to the control of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. It became a co-educational institution. It returned to an all-girls facility in 2002 until its closing in 2011. Today, it's a training facility for various law enforcement agencies. And that's another thing. They had a damn hospital on this campus that was later, when I was there, it was turned into a schoolhouse. And there was all of this leftover equipment and stuff everywhere. And it said by 1930, Samarcand had a hospital and an accredited high school. Makes me sick. Makes me absolutely sick. There's a bunch of people that work there that should be in jail right now. That's all I fucking know. And Lord help you if you had any kind of learning disability or you were actually slow, because they did actually have mentally challenged people. You got treated like shit. Your basic needs were not being met. They treated you like an adult prison would treat you as a child, which is crazy when I look back on that whole experience. It's like, wait a second. I know a lot of these kids committed crimes, but don't you think they committed crimes because their parents acted just like you're fucking acting? Why would you even go into a profession where you're going to work with children if you don't want to guide children? A lot of these people need a lesson on empathy that worked in these places. And I'm just telling you that she worked in that place and ran that place for evil reasons. Clearly. Some lawmakers expressed reservations. I thought that was about the prostitution. So they came up with a lie. They said that all of these young girls were going to be prostitutes, that they would give venereal diseases to the men at Fort Bragg, even though some of these girls were under 10 years of age. And they lied. And they said that venereal diseases are going to harm our soldiers because these girls are going to grow up and be over there fornicating. And it was a reverend that got it all started. A pastor. So sick. I remember when I first went there, I was creeped out immediately. It's a scary thing to be on that bus, and then they bus you in there, and they don't even say, it's the worst. Like, how can I put it? You walk through the gate, they're like, get undressed. You're a child. And you're like, oh, me or her? Because I was with this other girl. And they're like, both of y'all. Like, they're screaming at you. Hovering over you. And it's just crazy looking back. Like, they say that they wanted to reform these young girls. But I'm here to tell you that violence, berating, yelling, screaming, hitting, none of that is going to reform anybody. If anything, it makes people grow up and want to bitch slap everybody. It's just crazy that there's still taxpayer money going to these programs all over the state of North Carolina. They're not good. They're evil. They do more harm than good by far. By far. Unfortunately, anytime you have COs, you're going to have abuse. Not all of them are good. Most of them are horrible people. It was the only job that they could damn get a certificate for or get accepted to. You know what I mean? It's like the bottom of the barrel. It's like working at a bar. You're going to meet the worst of the worst. And the Department of Corrections is the same when it comes to inmates and COs. And COs. I wonder what happened to all those women that were there. None of them would be alive now. It's been a damn 100 years since the school opened. Some of them might be alive that were... No, they couldn't be alive either, broke. Imagine being that young kid, though, and like... Yeah. Fucking sick. They've been doing it for years, huh? They've been mutilating children for years. All in the name of money, right? Because I'm sure there was money involved. They got funding, federal funding. So, if you think for a minute that none of that went to them, you're sorely mistaken. These people, time and time again, show that they're crooked, which is why they end up going to jail for damn stealing money from campaigns and other shit like Fannie Willis. Or they don't go to jail like Fannie hasn't yet, even though she should. It's just crazy because these places still exist, and they built 2 more in 2008. I think one in Cabarrus County and a different one, and I think those are for boys. Why are they being fucking loud? We all damn go the fuck on. I had to roll my windows up and cut my ear on them hot. Well, I'm about to go. I'm about to go get something to eat. I hope y'all have a good day. Yeah, I'm gonna go get something now. I'm starving. Where did your damn L go? You're missing an L on your name. Oh, that's not you. Well, I'll see you later. Y'all be safe. Bye.